All right. Hello, hello. We are going to watch another video. A game our kids can enjoy. Release minimum viable product live. Noobfire's actually, this is from Noobfire. He's here watching the stream right now. I also made the comment to him, when was the last time you made this video? Because it's a situation where this type of video can be made basically every 2 years. What the minimum viable product might look like changes. CIG, always is doing new things, always taking longer than we expect. So the idea of, I guess his thumbnail mentions feature creep versus minimum viable product, so the conversation might be a little bit different. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Let's see what he's got to say.
I do videos like this once every 2 years or so.
Yeah.
So welcome. Hello, YouTubers. This is Noobfire. Before we begin, let me talk about what my goal is with this one. The subject could be interpreted as an attack on the company, but it's not. It's actually the opposite. What I would like to explore is the best way to get the game released soonest, but soon requires the definition of what the minimum viable product is. So let's define that. I have said
Oof, it's a tough one to define at this point, and I think I would argue, and this is no shade on Noobfire, I would argue these are not videos or things that I as a content creator would be comfortable commenting on, because who am I to say what should be prioritized necessarily, or what would actually make the minimum viable product? Because I'm not a game developer, I don't quite understand at all how that works. But I guess we can make, like, what would I need for the game to be, I guess, okay to be called 1.0, right? That's really what I imagine where Noobfire is going to take this one.
In the past that I consider myself to be Star Citizen's #1 fan. I have noticed my excitement might have gone from what's coming out next week on Around the Verse to Chris Roberts' monthly report to what's coming out next year at CitizenCon to knowing what we're being shown is 3 or more years in the future. I'm still excited, but that excitement is measured differently. It's measured in larger chunks of time than it was before. We just got a new ship and we got some tier 0 mechanics and a small upgrade. These are no longer seen as super important to me. Not seen as super important.
What's crazy is these mechanics have been in the game. They're still tier 0, but that's okay. It was just, this was such a lazy release.
To the game or its release specifically. It adds nothing to what I feel is the minimum viable product, and therefore one could say that these additions bring us no closer to release. It's just another incomplete ship in an incomplete universe that needs to be wiped again. They give you the money to get there. When we watched the demo of the first jump point at CitizenCon keynote in 2018, we were shown real progress. The crowd was correct to go nuts with excitement, and that was seen at the time as a real turning point. Pyro would be just around the corner. There it is on the screen. That's why they would be showing it to us, right? It can't just be another BS marketing tactic because there it is on the screen.
That's exactly what it was. That as well. That's Ruin Station, isn't it?
Next year was 2019. Theaters of War. There it is, the next new thing. It's playable. It must be close to release. Another real turning point and another demonstration of real progress. I think that this type of hype might be good in short term to sell ships, but I don't think that these were specifically orchestrated to mislead either. I am very sure that priorities changed as things went down different pipelines. It's a contributing factor, however, to what I spoke about. It's an example of what may have changed my release expectations, how it went from being just around the corner to being another feature that I know may not be there for 10 or more years. CitizenCon must be viewed with the beer goggles off, and there must be a constant process of not falling blindly for what you're being told. The true game being played is you risk telling the community your true timeline.
Why do we have to make videos like this still?
People know the truth.
It's sad.
Would they be put off, and would they stop supporting? I have found that reporting on Star Citizen year to year has become a little bit like putting a band-aid over a gunshot wound. You're doing fine for the short term, but you always know that eventually someone's going to need to get in there and fix the real problem, or the internal injury will kill you. Is the project dead or dying? Absolutely not. No,
nope.
And there are a huge number of active backers who continue to play and pay. This year's trend is an indication of a good, healthy project. So if things are so good, you may be asking me why I feel defining the minimum viable product is what we need right now. Why would CIG risk defining this? Could it not fully backfire if the truth is known? The community has accepted going from missing deadlines on a roadmap to never committing to any deadlines. No deadlines can ever be missed if there aren't any. Right? Fuck. Jokes.
Even their internal deadlines, like it just feels like there's no consequence to anything that happens with them.
Aside, we back a small game project built on transparency that is unwilling to provide deadlines. There was an underestimation of the total task in the early days, compounded by a growing scope. So I ask, if we can't have a deadline, then can we at least put everything into two categories? Features and tech that are needed for a minimum release, and features and tech that can be added later.
I believe they've already done this. CitizenCon 2018. Titled Road to Release. I believe that was the segment. It was the pillars, and then they did pillar talk that got completely out of control because Chris would talk about silly things that didn't matter. But it was basically server meshing, org stuff, Spectrum, I think. And yeah, it was like the big foundational features, and that was it. The CitizenCon in 2018, I think, was the closest thing we got to this.
The company had spent a year building a progress tracker to satisfy our desire for transparency. I see that as the company's genuine effort to define the work ahead. But we can look at the distant past to see or get an indication of where we might be going. Let's explore this. Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous were announced around the same time. In the most basic terms, they were similar games with a completely different release plan. ED would achieve a basic core in a year and then release small and then iterate.
Yes.
And Star Citizen would simply achieve release. That's literally what we were told. Star Citizen backers were told some stuff, and many of us decided to pay money to see if that could happen. Somewhere around 2015, as these goals continued to stretch, the community was asked if we wanted the goals to stop and release what was pitched, or if we would let Chris fully realize our dream game. We were told that adding more parts would add time and delay the release, and apparently the community greenlit adding more. I don't remember being personally asked in 2015, and I don't think it matters because at the time, I would have probably said yes anyways.
You would have.
Yeah, Chris, you do you, boo. Make your game the way and as crazy as you want. Knowing that we would be looking off into 2023, still undefined project, still unreleased Squadron 42. No. I feel at that time I would have tapped out. I would have asked for some sort of yardstick. I would have said, let's work on that minimum viable release while dreaming about the future. I know and appreciate that it's not so simple, and I'm heavily generalizing as an armchair backer. You'd be correct to tell me that I'm not considering how interwoven and codependent these features are. So I will acknowledge, yes, I'm actually aware that physicalized damage needs physicalized components, and that system would need a complete gold standard pass for all the ships, which is waiting for the completion of all of the other supporting subsystems. I do appreciate all of the complexity, but a more general definition might help this subject. We have planets, we have rivers, caves, and clouds. We also want planets with outposts that have interiors. Adding mission caves,
we also want our own land, right?
new tech will also allow buildings on ArcCorp with interiors. And I'm happy that they're adding this. It's important and it's a key feature that we're expecting. But could all of this been on the add later? What side of the list is Subsumption on? Subsumption is the entire game with law, bounty, economy, trade, and missions. All of that is core to what we need in the game. Can this all be faked now, released, and then baked in later? It's already faked now, and yet we're playing it now. We fell into this trap where Squadron 42 and PU share tech. Squadron is basically a vertical slice of the PU, which is good news because in theory, Squadron will release and many of the core PU systems will be finished. As creep crept into the PU, Squadron becomes more and more complicated, and yeah, that also gets pushed back as well. There is a point, we know that there will be a soft launch, we know that there are core mechanics that are being worked on, and I guess what I'm asking is, are there some features that we can simply park and add later? We already know that we won't release with 100 systems. Would you be okay with releasing only the Stanton system? How about
I personally would, but I think I'm one of the very few that feel that way.
2, Stanton and Pyro?
Excuse me.
Can the jump be a faked loading screen initially, or do we actually need to have a fully realized jump point tech at release?
It comes down to this, is that question is irrelevant now, unfortunately, because we may not need it in as a player. You may not feel that you need even the lack of loading screens. I don't need that. That's not even the game I backed. The game I backed definitely had loading screens in it back in the day, right? The idea of now they've put themselves in this scenario where it's not what we need, it's what they need. They need to prove that they can do it. That's their problem. They put themselves in a situation where there's some things that they have promised, right? I do not use the word promise ever on this channel when talking about CIG, because very often they don't promise when people say they did. And in this case, a lot of players in a single instance, maybe thousands of players, right? The server meshed environment, that is something that was largely promised for many, many years. That has to happen. The lack of loading screens now has to happen. There's some very large features that are part of the, I wouldn't argue that careers or anything like that in the game. I'm talking more about the basic core of Star Citizen that are promises. And my argument would be that's a version of server meshing would be one of those promises. They have to prove they can do it. They're stuck in this scenario where they're in the proof of concept phase of Star Citizen, and they get to say, see, I told you we can do it. See, guys, I knew we can do it. You didn't believe in us, but we did it. That's where they are now. They don't care about the game whatsoever. Is the vibe that I get. They don't care about the way it plays. They don't care about how much we enjoy it. They really, as a development studio, are working towards the simple, see, I told you we can make jump points. I told you we could do pyro. I told you we could do server meshing. And I told you we can get more players into a server at a decent frame rate. Then it's subsumption and other things like Noob is talking about in chat.
Already
right?
know that they're planning all sorts of lore and missions, but would you be okay with releasing on a couple? We already know that they're planning base building, land ownership, and player-owned buildings. So would you be okay with releasing without that? Is it okay to get the game core stable? Is it okay to get persistence and some form of sharded mesh complete? Would it be okay to get that done, take a pause to polish, and test things? Push the patch to beta release, test and polish some more, and then just release without adding any more stuff. With release, now your grind actually matters, your reputation actually matters, and this is where your insurance time counts down like it's supposed to. It's a real game with a promise of a rich future of new features. And now you're getting ready to type something really nasty in the comments, but here's the alternative. We continue to build the core like what's being done. Everything. We continue to inject more deliverables on the road towards completion. The list is as follows. Fully fleshing out mining, salvage, and fuel. Real hangars, warehouses, cargo timers, but also manually loading and unloading cargo. A full implementation of subsumption-based economy.
I know this text is really small, but there's no way, even if it gets all the way down to the bottom, this list will even be, brush the surface of everything that needs to happen in this game.
With subsumption-based trade with NPCs who move cargo around to offset our effect. We will realize the 10-to-1.
All right, so I got to pause this for a second. Maxlu in chat, I don't get the obsession with release. Some of us back the game for a game, and the only way the game starts is if it starts. MMOs have to start. Otherwise, they're not fun. That's why people are obsessed with release. The best part of an MMO is starting. The second best part is continuing, right? But knowing that it won't start over again is kind of the important thing.
society of off-the-rails
They
NPCs who live
constantly
and act
change.
like real players. Player
But they only
ownership
start
of land,
once.
apartments, warehouses, hangars, shops, and production facilities. Player-owned outposts and or player construction of said outposts from a ship that's currently a drawing, either as a paid service or for personal use. Reputation, law, bounty, and criminality. All complete to include gameplay for snare, search, interdiction, being arrested, being tried in court, fines, and prison. Looting, gathering, crafting, building weapons and armor. Players tuning engine and ship components to improve their yield. Large and small ship system management at that Scotty level, like the
Engineering.
Ship
Yep.
breaching, boarding, and hacking. Large and small ship components and repair, farming, and all of the stuff that goes with that. Fishing by the river, camping by the river, ships that can connect together to form a large repair platform, modularity, ship-based tractors,
Modularity.
fire, rooms, air and firefighting, environments with toxic or radioactive effects, sickness, long-lasting player wear, replacement limbs, scars, tattoos, pets, the hex code page system, night
Yo, the hex code pay system is never happening. I
vision,
really
finishing
believe
the
that.
ship naming system, finishing the ship flight performance, physicalized damage, physicalized components, the release of a 6-year backlog on concept ships, fully
W.
physicalized planetary orbits with day-night cycles, physicalized weather, VIP game loops for both NPCs and players, media and reporting loops with in-game broadcasting, data running complete with espionage, interception, sale on the black market, the black market with theft and trade of stolen goods, exploration, including the sale of scanned data, wormhole jump points, including scanning drones and charting stable and unstable conduits with a ship, mining, including mining drones, and all of the other changes that they're making right now. And then
And how many of these do we need to be a minimum viable product? Maybe like a handful?
of course, refueling and rearming, which includes their drones as well. And that is an incomplete list. You may see why, perhaps in the absence of a deadline, the imagination wanders and you're left with a bleak assessment that the game isn't being built for us. It's being built for our kids. Jokes aside, is it really that wrong to want to map out the release and the future? We've all been told so much about the idea of a soft launch. We all know that it's coming. I'm also fine with the explanation that we're just noisy and we can't be trusted with deadlines. At least tell us the basic triage of the codependent tasks, even if it had no dates. I would still like some indication as to what the company sees as
Ship-based tractor beams have to be in there. Modularity has to be in there. Large and small ship systems, components, and repair has to be in there. And the engineering has to be in there.
pre or post-release features. Can I
Along with black market trade, exploration, fuel and rearming, wormhole jump points, all those need to be in there.
eventually tell people that the game is released and then be excited to play knowing that more content will be added in the future? This idea is nothing revolutionary. Many games release like this, and yes, there is a problem where the game release is busted, killing public opinion. I'm not proposing that we rush. I just want something beyond what we have. Right now, it just seems like there are 20 years of stuff left to be added, and I'm worried that this is not a sustainable way to deal with the subject. I posted a poll to check that I wasn't just blowing stuff out of proportion. I wanted to
Noob, I voted 2027 because it's funny. Nobody was going to vote anything other than 2027. The fact that some people voted honestly is hilarious.
see if I was crazy or not, and as it turns out, my interpretation of the release timeline isn't as uncommon as I thought. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. The video was purposefully designed to generate conversation and discussion. It's not a rant or negativity towards the company or the talented people that are making our game. We're smarter together. Please comment your comments in the comments. Be as detailed or general as you like, and I'm perfectly fine that you tell me that I'm wrong, because I look forward to your insight. We're on the verge of 318, a big patch. And I know with that, we are about to embark on another epic road to a next milestone. Fly safe.
All right, I'll try. I'll try to fly safe in my Antares. It's gonna be tough though. Yeah, the minimum viable product question is just like Noob said. It comes up every couple of years. It's simple for me. A working economy. It doesn't have to be like super duper in depth, but you know, some variety. And so for me, it would definitely be like Quanta, a little bit of whatever subsumption they need, the at least one or two other systems to go to, physicalized damage components on both ships and armor, ammo, some level of crafting, which I think they're definitely going to, not space station, but outposts that we can own, ownership of that. That's a whole big thing, and the list can go on, right? All of us can make our own lists that are quite long. It's a lot. It's a lot that still needs to happen, and it's hard to argue that this game might not be for our kids. And what's funny is I don't think Noobify or I plan on having kids. Does Noob have kids? I don't know. But anyway, minimum viable product, Star Citizen. It's like oil and water. They just don't exist together.